Good evening. Welcome to our program Inside Asia. This week we have a special guest, Dr. Zarni. He is an expert on Burma. He has done research on various issues related to Burmese society and political system. We will discuss two issues, one on the Burmese upcoming elections and the other one which is quite hot now, which is a very controversial issue, the Burmese nuclear ambition. Thank you, Dr. Zarni, for joining this program. The Burmese regime has already set up the date for the upcoming election, November 7th. Very short time for anybody to prepare for a good, fair, inclusive election, is it not?
Most everybody knows that this is a charade, this is a sham. But I think the junta is going through the motions, both for domestic, the Tamador or armed forces consumption, and the consumption of the ASEAN and Asian neighbors that would like to tell their Western friends that Burma is moving along electoral process. You know, it's just basically a public relations exercise internationally, but domestically, it's actually from the military's perspective. It is basically the final stage of the war to decimate the National League for Democracy. Although NLD has been deregistered automatically as a result of their decision to boycott the elections, NLD remains a very potent popular force led by Aung San Suu Kyi. So the junta's aim is to shoot two birds with one stone, to pacify the ASEAN colleagues that are nudging the junta to do something about their image. This is like a window dressing, image fixing. Domestically, like I said, it was more of a political war against the NLD.
So it's the end game, it's the last quarter.
Yes.
He must,
well, that is how the junta perceives the election. That's why they're, when you look at the junta's election preparations, they're no different from their war preparation against, say, the Karen National Union or some other politically defiant ethnic minorities. So, because they look at the world only through the prism of war. So that, for them, politics is not give and take, and negotiations, dialogue. We disagree, but we be friends next time. This time we'll find. That's not their ethos. That's not their institutional view. Their view is that if you disagree, just like George W. Bush ethos. If you are not our friend, you're our enemy. There's nothing in between. Politics is everything that happens between friends and enemy. I mean, like in between that space, we negotiate, we debate policies. You win this time, I win next time. That's all this. For them, it's zero sum. So they're approaching this election as if it were a zero-sum war.
So it's a win-win in the end, because whatever is the outcome of these elections has no bearing at all, because ASEAN, as you mentioned, in the end have to recognize it one way or another. The rest of the world might not know what's going on.
Well, Dr. Surim Pitsuwan has already said, actually repeatedly, no election is unacceptable, and so flawed election is better than no election. Therefore, however imperfect and flawed the electoral process in Burma would be, ASEAN has no choice but to rubber stamp it. But I think the ASEAN is in a funny position, because if you look at ASEAN, the nature of the government within the ASEAN, how many can call themselves democratic? Say, like, with the exception of, say, Indonesia and Thailand, even, Thailand's a bit backsliding on this electoral or democratic process. It's very difficult to know, and there are a lot of one-party states within ASEAN. And so I think it's a bit of a misplaced confidence when we say ASEAN can do something. No, they won't. They cannot and they won't, because they're better than the Burmese regime in terms of, like, governance, economic performance. But fundamentally, within ASEAN, the leaderships across the board do not seem to be committed to, like, basically providing people with space to participate in public and policy affairs.
Do you think after the elections, the Burmese people will be able to some sort of a push for a little bit of change? A lot of argument has been focused on that there could be some space that's being created from changing the military regimes to a civilian, even though it's the same group of people. In your view, are you going to buy that?
No, I don't, because I lived through a similar process. I was only like 12. I was still young, but old enough to remember what transpired back in 1974 when General Ne Win at the time decided that one-party rule needed to have this democratic or electoral veneer. In 1973, the constitutional referendum was held, and it was approved by 92% of the popular vote, although the people were extremely unhappy. In 1974, they held the elections, and then they brought in this civilianized government. 14 years after that sham election was held, basically General Ne Win's rule collapsed in 1988 in the midst of popular uprisings. But I think what is important to remember is not that the generals are taking off their uniform and putting on civilian longi or sarong, but what they retain in their heads. They may look civilian on the outside, and a lot of them want to be addressed as generals when they interact with the general public. Yeah? And also they maintain the political entitlement mentality. They have this entitlement psychology. They claim that they are entitled to rule the country because they are the most modern, the most organized, the most patriotic, and the most uncorrupted institution. When you look at the reality on the ground, like the opposite is the case. So the key is not to look at how they look on camera or how they look in public, as civilian, but what they retain in their head, which is the militarism and which is the national security mindset. When in their view, national security really means the security of the regime, security of the leadership.
So Tatmadaw, do you think will use the elections to strengthen their grips over the life of the Burmese, or the opposite, or trying to permeate into other aspect, because we live in the globalized world. Indonesia, which has used to be under militarism, now is become very democratic. Even Thailand, the role of the military has transformed. So how do you see the role of Tatmadaw? Stronger, even worse, or maybe much more dispersed after the election?
In terms of Tatmadaw's grip on power, it's getting stronger because not only are they in firm control of the Tatmadaw as an institution, we have to remember this is the institution that did not break, at the heights of very serious turmoils, like Cyclone Nargis that killed 150,000 people. The army leadership was completely irresponsive. They were blocking the international offer of aid. Even then, the rank and file members, basically follow the order. And then, a year before that, the Tatmadaw that claims to be the guardian of the nation and basically the defender of the Buddhist faith, the Tatmadaw was on the streets in Burma, shooting and killing monks. Shooting like a student, activist and ethnic armed groups. It's a different order, but killing massive number of monks and raiding monastery is a different type. And so even the Burmese who lived through the colonial rule or Japanese military rule say that even the alien colonizers or military occupiers were not as ruthless as the Tatmadaw of today. And so the Tatmadaw, unlike the Thai military or Indonesian military, has not evolved in a progressive, forward-looking direction. It has basically backslided. It has regressed. They look at the old warrior kings from 15th century, 12th century. That's why when you go to the new jungle capital, Naypyidaw, you don't see the statues of modernizers like Unu, or Aung San Suu Kyi's father, General Aung San.
Only.
Yeah, exactly. Burina, Alampia, all these, the feudal warrior kings. That's their model. That's why it's so difficult for the foreigners to understand that although they look modern, they may be going for nuclear weapons or technologies, or they may be acquiring MiG-29s and appearing smart, wearing ties and suits, but their mentality is feudal and backward. And as long as the Tamator leadership, whatever attire they wear, civilian or general's uniform, as long as they maintain this feudal warrior militarist mentality, this country has no chance of moving forward.
Okay. Here is the dilemma. You describe very ably the characters of the Burmese regime. Now, what should the international community do to engage or disengage, or both?
Yeah. Well, I think that the question of engagements to me is a non-issue, because Burma is thoroughly engaged. It's structurally integrated into the Southeast Asian and South Asian market integration. If you look at the greater Mekong sub-region, there are 11 sectors, from energy to infrastructure, agribusiness, tourism. I think GMS may be more consequential in terms of Burma's development than ASEAN. ASEAN is a grouping of 10 countries, but GMS is only economic integrative network. But within the GMS, Burma is the most important country, despite its low GDP. If you compare Burma's GDP with Thailand's, Thailand's GDP is like $200 billion, and Burma's is only 12 billion. Burma is the largest landmass that bridges South Asia and Southeast Asia, as well as southern China. And then if you go beyond, say, Bangladesh and India, you basically get to Afghanistan, Iran, and Middle East. And so this is all part of Asian freeway network, Asian railway, and also market creation. So Burma is thoroughly integrated, thoroughly engaged.
Very strategic.
Yeah, exactly. The Burmese generals may not be represented in international meetings, but the Asian Development Bank, World Bank, and others, they facilitate. They play the role as a policy broker between the generals in Naypyidaw and other private investors, other governments. And then so I think the international community is already engaged. It's not just the Chinese, not just the Thais, not just the Indians. These Asian neighbors get blamed for, and deservedly so. But the West is not coming clean. We've got a Francis Total. Yeah. The United States has a Chevron. Yeah. U.S. box human rights, but the U.S. has not banned Chevron. And there's so many private interests from European Union countries waiting, in Rangoon or outside Rangoon to basically to ready themselves when, not if, the Burmese market opens up. And so in that scenario, Burma is integrated very well into the global economy. And then we should not fool ourselves into thinking that the Burmese generals are isolated. No, they're not. They have access to banks in Singapore, Dubai, Macau, and they may not be walking into Citibank in New York and depositing their ill-gotten gains, but they have so many people who are helping them. The UN officials, academics who say oh, we need to engage with the regime. But the crucial thing that can make a difference in the long run is that engagement with the society. That is very crucial. The Burmese monks ought to be engaged. If you compare Thai Buddhism and Thai monks and the Burmese Buddhism and Burmese monks, Thai Buddhism is far more socially progressive. They're involved in HIV/AIDS campaign. They're involved in all kinds of issues that concern Thai people. And the Burmese Buddhism needs to transform. The same with Burmese Christianity. If you talk to people, missionaries from other countries, they say that Burmese Christianity is the most conservative strain that they've ever come across, perhaps with the exception of Christianity in Africa, very evangelical type of Christianity. So the society was closed off for 25 years under Ne Win very effectively. I think the prospect for engagement lies with the people on the ground. not with the regime. The regime doesn't care. As long as they have support from Russia, China, India, Thailand, as long as they have money from neighboring countries and global extractive industry, they are fine. But who is not fine is the people. And they are the ones who need most engagement at all sectors.